is going to walk through exactly how we took our show rate from 56% to 81% after making one simple tweak. Before I explain what that tweak is, I need to explain two things. Number one, we are currently spending around 300 grand a month on our ads. So this is on a significant amount of volume. We're not booking 10 calls a month and increased our show rate from 5 live calls to 8, right? We're booking 500-600 calls a month. And after we made this one tweak, we went from 56% to 81%. So it definitely works if you implement. Secondly, before I explain the one tweak, I do need to explain some other foundational things you must have in place in order for this to work. In other words, with show rate, what we found historically is that there's very rarely one lever to pull that will just massively improve your show rate just from that one thing alone. What we normally see is that when you stack together a ton of individually small things, when you put those things together, that's what creates the great show rate. So we already had a very strong foundation in terms of, email sequences, cancellation processes, etc., application grading systems that we have as well. We already had those things in place. Then we added this one thing on top, and that is what skyrocketed us from 56 to 81% show. But again, it's important to note that that one lever, if we pulled that in isolation without any of the other things, it wouldn't have had as big an impact as it did. So I want to make sure that I detail every single lever that we have in place right now for show rates. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to explain exactly what that one big change was that we made that ultimately took us from 56 to 81. So let me get into it. The first thing I want to explain is you need to always be optimizing for cost per live qualified call. This is really important. You'll see in the way in which we run our ads, and we do this for all of our clients as well, obviously we do this internally, is we optimize for cost per live qualified call, not cost per booked call period. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is because one of the steps down here, I'll jump ahead and then I'll go back. This third point right here, what you want to be doing is you want to cancel, at least this is what we do and it's worked really well for us. We cancel all unqualified bookings and obvious no-shows, obviously before the call is due to take place. So if we get a booking right now, it's 9 a.m. and the booking's for tomorrow at 3 p.m. If the booking comes in and it's either obviously unqualified or it's going to be an obvious no-show. We define an obvious no-show as one-word answers to the questions that we ask on our application. Obviously, fake information, that goes without saying. And for us, what we found with our offer, anyone who usually books with a Gmail email address and not a business email doesn't show for the most part, or at least on those bookings, we have a 30% show rate. So we automatically cancel those bookings as well. So I say to optimize for live qualified calls simply because sometimes you may feel as though damn, we're getting all these bookings. I don't want to cancel them because I've paid for the booking. I want to at least give them a chance to show. The problem with that mindset is it massively drops your show rate because most of those calls naturally don't show. So your overall show rate looks really, really bad. Instead, what you want to do is you want to cancel those off the calendar, remove them. That frees up space for more qualified bookings to go onto the calendar. And the only calls that are left on the calendar, in theory, are qualified calls who are at least likely to show, the real people, etc. They're likely to show up. Great. Now, out of that segment of the total bookings, that's what we base our show rate on. That's also how you can increase your show rate and also increase calendar efficiency and your sales team's output, because now, again, the only calls that are left on that calendar are seemingly qualified bookings as opposed to wasting slots with unqualified calls. So that's a really important note. Now, just to rip through these first couple of things, which are relatively basic, but again, I want to make sure I explain it because these are part of what created that 56 to 81% show rate increase. On the booking application, right, you want to ask the question, are you 100% able to show up at the time you selected? We do not offer reschedules. If you no-show, then our system automatically blocks your IP address from being able to rebook. This is a really important question, not because necessarily put it this way, everyone who books a call will select yes to this question, right? The options you want to have is just yes or no, naturally. Obviously, if they say no, you cancel the call, great. But most people say yes. And so it's not that you are able to split the traffic and see who's going to show and who's going to not purely based on this question. But what it does is it puts it in the prospect's mind that, oh, they're serious, I should show up to this. So again, that in isolation with none of the other things isn't going to give you a great show rate. But that in combination with these other things that I'm going to go through, it does add to increasing show. So again, it's seemingly small, but that does at least put in the prospect's mind that these guys are serious. I better show up, otherwise I can't rebook. And if it's if you have an offer that your prospects genuinely are interested in, it does help with show rate. So that's one thing. Now, in terms of how this looks in reality, let me just pull up an example. Right, so you can see here with one of our calendars, it's right here. That's how it looks in reality. It's just one of the questions that you ask on the booking page. And again, it's just a simple yes or no. If you can add here like no dash, don't book a call or something like that, but I've never really found it to be, at that much incremental increase in show rate. So I just have yes, no. If they select no, you cancel it. But again, most people are going to select yes. But it's one thing that you can do. So next thing, post booking page structure. You should, it's the most invasive, but it does give the highest show rate in terms of the structure that I'm going to explain here. At least the initial video, it's very direct. It's very in your face. Like if you don't show, you can never rebook, all that type of stuff. So it is quite invasive, but again, it does give you the highest show rate. If you're on the lower end right now, in terms of maybe on your thank you page, you're like, thanks so much for booking a call. Like you don't really speak to show rate. You may not want to jump to this version straight away because that might impact, like what can happen is if you're too direct on the thank you page, sometimes in certain industries, certain prospects can kind of take offense to that and they cancel their call. We had that happen with one client. And so basically what we did is we completely reverted her back to the original structure and that actually helped her. But for the most part, you can be quite invasive, quite direct, and people are fine with it. This is what we say though. So in the thank you page, the main thing is having a thank you video that this should literally be like a 1 minute thing. It's not very in depth, but you want to say something along the lines of, thanks so much for booking in a call. Given we get a ton of bookings, we've temporarily reserved your spot. All you need to do is reply, let's talk to the email I just sent you in order for us to keep your call on the calendar. This shows us that you're 100% serious and are willing to show up. We do, and then you can, again, in terms of, it's quite invasive, but it can work. We do have a $97 no-show or cancellation fee. So if you don't respond to our confirmation message and you don't attend your appointment, then we will charge you a $97 no-show fee. We're extremely strict on this as we value our time, and more importantly, we value our clients' time. So please make sure to attend the appointment at your scheduled time so that you don't get charged the fee. On the fee, I know you're probably gonna have a question. How do you actually enforce this? Look, how you enforce it is technically you can send them an invoice for $97. The prospect's never going to pay it. You're not trying to make money from this. It's more about just saying, hey, this is here's our policy, because we're so specific on our time. So it's not necessarily that you're actually going to collect the funds on this, because again, how you would technically enforce it, unless you get the client's card information on the booking page, which I don't recommend to do because then no one's going to book. But the way you would collect it is sending them a $97 invoice and expect them to pay. They're obviously not going to pay. So you're not trying to collect money on it, but it's just a matter of putting it in their mind, like, oh, these guys are serious, I should show up to my call, right? And then finally, you would want to say something like, now, I know you're probably thinking, how can I be so sure that this random stranger on the internet can get me whatever the desired outcome is that you help your clients achieve? So right below, I've linked a short video where I break down XYZ super valuable thing. And this video, so you should have like a 1 minute video at the top, which explains this section right here. Then right below that, I recommend to have as I say here, either a training, a podcast, interview, or a case study. Essentially, it's just an additional training proving in whatever form that you can. We created this for our clients, so that's why I talk about it in this way. But whatever form that you can, you essentially want to prove why a stranger should show up to the call. Ideally, this asset should position you as a true expert and should show prospects why they have to 100% show up to the appointment. So you got to think, right? If you think of your absolute hero, whoever that may be, if you book in a call with them, you're going to show up. They don't need to send any emails before the call. They don't need to send any extra value. They don't need to tell you, hey, make sure you show up, otherwise X, Y, Z. They don't need to say any of that. Why? Because you inherently trust them and you actually want to speak to them. And so whilst it's very difficult to get that level of trust built in the small window from when a prospect books and when they should show up to the call, you do want to try and do as much of it, or you want to try and, if the ultimate trust, ultimate hero figure is over here, you want to try and get as close to that as possible. And the best way that I found to do that is, again, either through a training, so just proving, like giving them a lot of value up front before the call. That's going to help them realize, oh, this person's legit. They can definitely help me. I can see they've got great results, basic stuff. A podcast, if you have been on somebody else's podcast, that's really, really powerful. Similarly with an interview, because by the very nature of being interviewed, it means you're somebody important in whatever field in which the interview is being done. So like whatever, right? If you're a doctor and you're being interviewed by another expert in the field, well then it kind of proves that you are not maybe a normal doctor, for example, right? For example, anybody who goes on like a Joe Rogan podcast, you inherently think that that person is somebody important, somebody valuable, somebody who has something of value to say on whatever topic it is that they're speaking about, right? Same thing with an interview. Again, building that trust, increasing that trust, value as well. If in the podcast, in the interview, you're giving out value, giving out insights, etc. And obviously a case study, this is what we use right now. Case studies are also very, very powerful, where you just literally show, hey, we took a client from this point to this point, and here's exactly how we did it. Here's the exact steps that we took. It's indisputable evidence that you can do what you say. So these things really help, again, increase that trust factor before the call, increasing show rates ultimately. Now, that's on the thank you page. And then obviously you have the cancellation process that I spoke about earlier. Great. So that's kind of the stuff before / immediately after booking the call. Now, post-booking, there's two things. The first one is a basic email sequence. I'm going to give you all the scripts, word for word, the word for word emails that we send right here, right now. The second one, though, this is what the big lever is that we pulled that ultimately took us from 56 to 81%. But let me just quickly show you these emails. So we have 4 emails that send out. I will link this doc, by the way, in the description below, so you can open these up and you can actually see the word-for-word emails that we send. But you can see I've got the time delays here, as well as the subject lines, pre-header, everything's scripted out here. This is exactly what we send. If you book in a call with us right now, you'll see these emails because this is what we use. So I'm not hiding anything. Email 1, subject, immediate action required. It's basically just saying the same thing I said before about, hey, make sure you reply, let's talk, to confirm your spot. Nice and simple. Again, if you just sent this email in and of itself, that probably isn't going to have a huge impact to your show rate. But again, that email in combination with all the other emails, in combination with all those other levers I just explained, plus the last lever that I'm going to explain here in a minute, that's what creates a good show rate, right? Email 2, we send that an hour later. By the way, this first one delays for 5 minutes right after they book, just so the prospect feels as though you've actually sat there and wrote it out yourself. If they book and then they immediately get this, they know it's an automation, it just decreases its effectiveness. So send that. After an hour, I send this email here, which is like, it's acting like it's a reply. Did you get this? Double checking you saw this. Hey, I wasn't sure if you was able to check this out, but basically here's a case study of how we took one of our clients from X to Y in T time. And then here, you just want to link back to the thank you page. So that video I explained here on the thank you page, which is the training, podcast, interview, or case study, you just want to send that in the email and say, hey, did you get a chance to check this out? So you're linking right back to that, which again should position you as an expert, increase their trust, all that type of stuff. And this stuff as well, just side note, it's all optimized around cold ads. If you have a big organic audience, you don't really need to do much of this because the people already inherently see you as an expert. They have a lot of trust in you. They like you, all those good things. So you don't really need to do this. But if you're running cold ads, you have to do this because the person has no idea who you are. You're a complete stranger to them, right? And then finally, 2 more actually. Wait 3 hours from when this email 2 sends. Then we send a testimonial, just another result really. And then finally, 7 hours after that, we send a value video as well, like a training video that I did. It's a client training, but I send it just before the call anyway, because it's super valuable. And it speaks to exactly our ideal market. That's really important here. It's exactly every single person who books in a call with us, they want to get to 500 grand to $1 million a month with an agency or coaching business. Pretty much all the time. And so I just show them before the call exactly how. And also it's a very valuable video that if somebody watches it, they'll realize we're the real deal, that we actually do what we say, because I just show them in that video exactly what we've done, how we do it, why it works, etc. So that's what we send. One big key before I move on to the final thing here is you want to try and send, if you have 3, I'd recommend 3 to 4. Don't have much more than that because then it gets like kind of ridiculous. People get annoyed, etc. But I really recommend to structure, I recommend to just copy this, but the time delays, you must make sure that all 4 send out ideally before the call. Now you never are going to know, at least we use ActiveCampaign. So it's very hard to know exactly when the call's booked, but you want to try and structure the time delay so that most of the emails send out ideally within 12 hours of the booking being made. So then that way it's safe to assume that majority of the calls that get booked are going to be probably 12 hours plus out from this point right now. So that means by the time of their call, because these are going to be structured within or sent out within 12 to 14 hour, a 12 to 14 hour window, they're going to receive all of these emails before their booking, which is good because we ideally want them to go through all of them before their booking so they actually show up to the book call, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Now, final thing, this is the main one, honestly, that just absolutely crushed it for us. Essentially, it's you want to manually outreach to each booking from a setter or a sales coordinator or even the founder. If you don't have anyone on your team right now or whatever it is, you do it yourself, right? It's really important. As I say here, it doesn't matter who does it. It matters that it gets done, okay? And all below SMSs and whatnot need to be sent with an iPhone. I'm going to give you all the word-for-word scriptings, but you need to go iPhone to iPhone because that increases response rate as well. But whether it's a setter that does this, a sales coordinator that does this, the founder, or even, I don't know why I've not added this on here, the closer. So if you have a sales team, the closer, really, their mindset should be, I need to own my calendar. Whoever's on my calendar, it's my job to make them show up because it's my calendar. They're on it's my booking, right? That should be the closer's mindset. And so if you don't have a setter who can own this, you don't have a sales coordinator who can own this, and for whatever reason you can't do it, then the closer needs to do this themselves. If you have a closer. If you don't, then you need to do it yourself if you don't have these other positions. If you're interested, we have a specific position called a sales coordinator who does this. So his entire focus is our show rate. That's also what increased that's why it's increased so much. But here's the 8-step process that this is the big thing. We already had all these other things in place. And so as I say, like they need to be in place in order for this to work, but we already had it. So when we implemented this final 8-step process, this is what took us from 56 to 81. So first things first, every single booking should be treated as a lead, meaning we reach out to them within 5 minutes of booking a call, and we double dial them, and ideally we use a local dialer, right? That's really important. A lot of people have that system set up for leads, which is great, which is needed, but they forget to do that same system for bookings. So treat every booking as a lead. That's the first thing. Second step, when reaching out, we text the prospect with something similar to, hey name, my name is XYZ from company name. Then we double dial the prospect. So this first message here is sent with an iPhone. It shows up as blue on the prospect's end, which is better than it showing up as green as a message bubble. You guys know, like when you get a green message, you never respond. When it's blue, you usually respond. So that's the first thing. Then we double dial. So we send that message before we call. The reason why is because this shows your name on the prospect's phone when you call them as maybe dash name, which massively increases the pickup rate. Instead of having it just as a number, when you send that first message, for somehow, some way, the iPhone knows that, oh, you're calling from the same number you just sent the message, and that message just said, my name is XYZ. So then when you call, it says maybe that person, because it's the same number. They're not certain, so they don't say it is this person, but they say maybe this person. So that, again, just really increases pickup rates. So you double dial them. Again, this should be within 5 minutes, as I said here, of the booking coming in, getting booked. Obviously, provided it's not midnight, naturally, right? So if it's in your working day, that's when it should be done. Step 3, if they don't answer, then we repeat the exact same steps on WhatsApp. So you take the number, and by the way, you get the number from the booking of the call, obviously. We then take that number, we put it into WhatsApp, see if it connects to a WhatsApp account. Sometimes it won't, but most times it will. Connect to a WhatsApp account. Okay, great, it connects. Perfect. Create the contact number, prospect name. Then we send the exact same thing on WhatsApp. Copy paste this message. Hey, name, prospect name. It's Kai Bax calling from scaleclients.io. Send that. Then we call on WhatsApp. Same thing. We double dial on WhatsApp, right? If they still don't answer, then we send an email and another SMS. Essentially, reaching out to try and get more info on the booking, right? That's what we say in the email and the SMS. But honestly, if you do these first 3 steps correctly, most of the time they're going to pick up, or at least text respond, right? But if they don't, then you send an email and an SMS. And really the goal with this initial contact, even though these prospects have already booked, is to get clear on the specific outcome that they want to get out of obviously speaking with us, and ensure they will 100% show up for the time that they booked. That's really the main goal. And also, and pre-qualify. That's the other thing as well. You want to just make sure that they're a good fit for what it is that you do. Because remember, that is where you can then, if you speak to them on the phone and you realize, this isn't a good fit, you can then cancel them off the calendar, right? Going back to this point, cancel them off the calendar. That frees up a slot for somebody more qualified to come in. That doesn't really speak to show rate, because if you didn't cancel that person you just spoke with, they're probably going to show up. So you would still have a high show rate, but now you're probably going to have high show rates with prospects who aren't a good fit. So when you look at closer efficiency and closer output, it's got you're going to have an inefficient calendar essentially because slots are being taken up by unqualified prospects. So you would cancel them. But as I say, honestly, most of the time, if you do these first 3 steps, 4 steps ish, they're going to answer. You're going to be able to have a conversation. And again, when you have the conversation, you just want to connect. Hey, so you booked for Friday at 3 p.m. Can you 100% make that time? You can kind of have a little joke about it. Can you 100% make that time? Obviously, I mean, outside of getting hit by like a bus or something crazy, can definitely make 3 p.m. Friday. Yeah, 100%. Awesome. By the way, I saw in your application, you mentioned that your whatever, your business does X, Y, Z. Tell me more about that. What have you got going on? Awesome. Also, out of curiosity, what are you looking to get out of the call? Are you looking for anything in particular? Are you just curious? Talk to me about like what are your goals? What are you looking to try and get out of the call? Great, XYZ, perfect. I'll pass those notes over to the closer. Look forward to speaking with you on Friday at 3 p.m. Then you would pass those notes over to the closer because it's really good for the closer to go into a call knowing what that prospect specifically is doing, because sometimes on the application they don't put too much information on, which is fine. So you have more info on like their business model, etc. They're qualified, definitely. Great. That's the first thing. Secondly, it's good for the closer to know what is this prospect's goal with the call. What are they looking to get out of the call? Obviously, the closer can find that out on the call for sure, but it's useful. It's not needed by any means, but it definitely helps at least somewhat to know that information before going into the call. So that's that. And then thirdly, finally, they're going to show up because you've just triple confirmed. You spoke to them. They've also, this is the other thing, the prospect has spoke to somebody from the company. So that really helps as well, because now it's not just some random company name. They actually know somebody from the company that they spoke to. And obviously, if that person is good, they should have had a good conversation. They should have been pretty impressed with the conversation and be like, yeah, these guys seem relatively legit. I'll definitely show up, right? So that's the goal of that. Now, step 6, if we're 24 hours out from the appointment, and the prospect still hasn't responded. So you've done all of these things and they've still not responded. Well, if we're 24 hours out, we cancel that appointment if we haven't heard from them. Really important. As a note, this is probably more important. You should only cancel appointments if calendar space is limited. If we have a client who is spending $100 a day, I never recommend to them to cancel qualified appointments if they don't respond, as there's no benefit. I do recommend for them to cancel, as I said here, unqualified appointments and or fakes or obvious no-shows, like I said earlier. But if you get an appointment come through and the booking looks relatively decent, right? Whatever they said on the application, it does align with who you have. It looks relatively qualified, yet you've reached out to them a ton of times and you've not heard anything back. Well, it's a qualified booking, but it's not confirmed. Okay, well, if you've not got limited space on the calendar, I would just keep it, because you got to ask yourself, what's the point in canceling? Because if I cancel, it's not like somebody more qualified is going to book into that slot, because you have low volume of bookings. And even if you do have another booking come in and that slot you didn't cancel, so it's still taken, well, because you've got so much other calendar space available, the other booking will just book in it another time anyway. You're not going to lose that new booking because this slot is taken and they could have booked there, but because you didn't cancel, now this new person may book at a later date and or maybe not book, or might not book, I should say. So hopefully that makes sense on like why you want to not cancel calls that are qualified if you're spending a low amount. However, on the flip side, you got to look at it from this perspective. The benefit for us, and really any of our clients that spend more than, I would say like 500 a day, is if you cancel a call who's not responded, right? Meaning they're likely to no-show, or at least they're more likely to no-show than somebody who has confirmed, right? Am I saying if they don't respond, they're not going to show? No. But like if you track individually, your show rate on responded confirmed calls and your show rate on non-responded, non-confirmed calls, the show rate on these guys is going to be significantly higher than these guys. So the likelihood of them showing is lower than the likelihood of somebody who has confirmed showing, right? So the benefit for us, as I say, is if we then cancel that call who's less likely to show, who hasn't responded, that slot can then get booked by another prospect who's more likely to show and close. There's opportunity cost for every calendar slot past 500 a day spent. That's why you want to cancel those off of the calendar, because if you don't, they may not show. And now the problem is at that point, again, it's 9:20 a.m. for me. If I have a booking at 9:30 and it goes, it takes up a slot from 9:30 to 10:15, for example, right? 45-minute slot. If that person doesn't show, I've technically just lost money, because what I could have done, if I could have predicted that that booking wasn't going to show, or at least, again, has a lower likelihood of showing, I could have removed that off the calendar, cancelled it out. Now my 9:30 slot becomes available. We could have, because we have high volume of spend, we're getting high volume of bookings coming in. I could have had another booking take that slot who is more likely to show, who's more qualified, and now all of a sudden at 9:30, I'm taking a call with a prospect who's qualified, who I can now make an offer to, which means I'm one step closer to getting a close. Hopefully that makes sense. But if I didn't make the cancellation, I would have had a no-show at that slot, or at least I would have been likely to have a no-show in that slot. And then when I have the no-show, I've got no one to make an offer to. Yes, I can hit my pipeline and whatever else, but you get the point. That's why you want, that's the opportunity cost, and that's why you need to be really specific. And it also becomes, it also means as you spend more, it becomes increasingly important to be extremely efficient with your calendar. And show rates is part of that. One of the things I want to say as well, just really quick, I don't think I mentioned it down here. On canceling calls, just remember, if you cancel a call that maybe you shouldn't have canceled. So for example, if you get a qualified booking, they don't respond, and we're 24 hours out, and they haven't responded still. So you cancel it. What can oftentimes happen, just because you cancel that call, doesn't mean to say that you've lost that prospect forever. Because what we found, it's very common, is we cancel an appointment that's qualified but didn't respond. The prospect then responds to the cancelled message saying, why did my appointment get cancelled? Hey guys, just seen this been cancelled. Like, why did this happen? Whatever else. They say some variation of that. But the point is, they respond to the cancellation message. Now, guess what? They've responded. So now you can have a conversation with them and rebook them. So it basically, it almost forces them to, if they're legit, it forces them to respond. Because if they're a real person, they're running a real company or whatever it is that you help your clients do, even if it's B2C, it's the same thing. They're genuinely wanting your help. They're genuinely looking forward to the call. They genuinely need a solution to whatever their current problem is, and you may be able to provide them that solution. They're a real prospect, right? Well, if they are looking forward to the call and then the call gets cancelled, it's going to force them to respond. Why did my call get cancelled? What's going on? Hey guys, can I rebook? Like, what's happening? And again, now they've responded, so now you can go ahead and rebook them at a later slot. And you now know that that person's definitely going to show. So you've basically got the best of both worlds. You've freed up the space on the calendar for somebody else more qualified to book in, but you've still got them. And now you just book them for tomorrow or the next day or whatever it is. And they've now been confirmed. So you kind of get best of both worlds. Great. So I just wanted to say that because sometimes canceling a call that seems good can be a little scary, but that can happen on the back end to where you don't lose them anyway. You just rebook them. So anyway. Step 7, once the day of the call booking comes around, so if, it's Wednesday for me, so if I have a call today at 10 a.m., whatever it is, the morning of, we also text all of the bookings for that day to reconfirm that they'll show up. The frame/structure of these messages is, hey, name, really excited to chat today at X time. Here's the Zoom link. I look forward to chatting. So you want to be careful of this message. You don't want to say, hey, are you definitely going to show? Because by this point, obviously, the only people that are left on the calendar, are the people you've spoken to. You've already pre-confirmed, you've already had the conversation, etc. Otherwise, they would have been cancelled, right? And so you want to be careful of like, hey, you're definitely going to show, because that would, okay, now it's kind of getting a bit ridiculous, right? Like it's probably going to annoy quite a few people, etc. Which I understand it would annoy me. So instead, you want to indirectly confirm it by sending something like this. Hey, here's the Zoom link. Hey, just wanted to remind you, or you won't even say remind, honestly. It's just, hey, looking forward to the call. Just so you know, this is the Zoom link. Sometimes clients, sometimes prospects get mixed up with Google Meets versus Zoom, but it's on Zoom at this link, right? So you're just reminding them, you're actually sending them the Zoom link, and that can actually happen. People get mixed up and confused where the call actually is, especially if you're not in an online business kind of industry, but you use Zoom. Some like people outside of our industry don't know what Zoom is, which makes sense. So that helps them. And again, it reminds them. But honestly, if they don't respond to this or anything like that, we don't do anything. We just send that message. Step 8, if at the time of the call, the prospect no-shows, after 5 minutes have passed, the closer will then text the prospect, hey name, my name is XYZ from company name, and immediately double dial them as well as an email. We get the closer to do this again because for us, the initial confirmation process here isn't done by the closer. It's done by our sales coordinator. So at the point of the call, the closer is technically a new person. The closer wouldn't have made contact with the prospect because that's all been done prior by our sales coordinator. So they have to resend this message to get their name to pop up to show us maybe closer name, whatever their name is, And that's why we do that. But if the closer is the same person as whoever did this initial couple steps, they won't need to say, hey, this is name from company name, because their number's already stored in the prospect's phone. They can just call them up right away, and that's it. Hopefully that makes sense in terms of the difference there. Now, and again, we'll double dial them. Whilst we've got Zoom open, or wherever you hold your calls, Zoom's open. It's 5 minutes past, it's 9:25 for me. If I had a call at 9:20, literally 5 minutes past right now, I would message the prospect and then double dial them on the phone. That also, so small, but that massively increases pickup rates. We just closed a deal this week, actually, from a new closer who came in, and he did this exact same thing. The lady didn't show at the time of the call. He called her and closed her on the call. Didn't even move over to Zoom. But obviously you can also do that. So when they pick up, they can go, hey, we got that call, remember? And they're like, oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. And usually they've just genuinely forgot. So then you can just, hey, I'll text you the Zoom link now, text them the Zoom link if they've not already got it, and then have the call on Zoom and do your thing. Or you can have it on the phone, although that is more difficult to have on the phone to try and get the close, but you can do that as well. And if the closer cannot make contact with the prospect after 10 minutes, then they will immediately let our setter or sales coordinator know. Again, keep in mind our sales coordinator who does this process, but they'll let them know that they didn't show, and then they will continue to reach out to get them back on the calendar. This is essentially how it works. We usually do that for like a week or so to try and get them back on. And if after probably not even a week, maybe 3 to 5 days, if there's still no luck to get them back on the calendar, we just kind of let that lead go and we just focus on new bookings. And finally, step 9, once we eventually make contact with the prospect, we strictly state, so if they don't show and we reach out and we get back in touch with them, we don't just say, hey, rebook, but rather we strictly state that we have a 1 reschedule policy, and we see if they're serious or not. If they are, we'll rebook them. If not, we'll move on. And if somebody does this twice, we forget them and we move on. We never speak to them again, basically. If they book, don't show, then we'll just basically, as I say, forget about the lead. The final thing I've realized is not on here, which is just another point that really does help show rates, is your calendar window. So we have recently dropped, you do need to play around with this throughout the week, because we've found availability, obviously on a Monday, you should have your calendar availability, like the booking window, should only really allow prospects to book over the next 2 days, ideally. If you can get it down to 2 days, your show rates, you don't even really need to do any of this stuff. Your show rates will improve just by having the booking window from whatever it is currently down to 2 days. But obviously, when you have it at 2 days and you do this, that's why we was able to get to 80% plus show rate on cold ads, which is also kind of crazy. But obviously, to get it down to 2 days, you need to make sure, like, you can't have one slot or 2-3 slots for today and tomorrow, or tomorrow and the next day, and then drop your availability down to 2 days, because you won't get any bookings, right? There's not enough open slots for the prospect to choose the time that works best. So to get it down to 2 days, you need to have ideally a lot of closes, really, or at least just a calendar that's really, really open and your ad spend not too high, so that there's a lot of opportunity for the prospect to book at a time that works well for them. If you don't have that availability, then you're forced to open up the booking window, because although you may get some bookings today or tomorrow, you will lose bookings because people don't have times to choose from, so they just won't book. That's what will happen if you drop it to 2 days or 3 days, but there's not that many slots available in those 2 or 3 days. They just won't book, so you'll lose the booking. So then you've got to weigh up, would I rather lose the booking, but all the bookings I do get book today or tomorrow, which really means they're going to show up, or would I rather just get all the bookings I can get and try and get them to book as close to today? If that means opening up 4 days, it means opening up 4 days. Honestly, there's not really one right or wrong answer to that question. I personally would make that decision based on your cost per call. If you've got a cost per call of $50, you can afford to lose some bookings in order to get more bookings today, tomorrow, the next day, which are more likely to show. I would personally make that bet. I would make that trade-off, really, is what I would do. But if your cost per call is like ours, we pay like $550 to our KPI cost per qualified book call, that is $650 or below. And so we're paying $500, $550, we're always below our KPI, but it's still $550 cost per call. So I'm not willing to lose a booking just so the bookings we do get show book for today or tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? So I play around with that. I open it and close it depending on our closer availability. And also we, when it comes to like Thursday or Friday, if you don't use a rolling availability scheduler like OneShub or I think OneSub maybe is the only one that actually does it, to where they go 3 available days. So if you're on Friday and the you have your booking window for, say, for example, 2 days. Well, what OneSub does is on the weekends, if you don't take calls, it will go Monday, Tuesday is the 2 days, right? Whereas on Calendly, it just goes 2 days from today. So Friday, it will just go it will go Saturday, Sunday. Problem with that, all of a sudden you've got no slots available, because if you don't take calls on the weekend, that's it. And so you do need to like kind of just keep an eye on it throughout the week. If you're on Thursday and you have it 2 days or 3 days, you may need to open 5 days to get a couple days early into next week so that you still get those bookings in. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, this is what we did. Hopefully this was useful, and I'll see you in the next video.